Alright, Jain people, and welcome back to the channel. So, today we're going to be going through the Navy's Project 75 I deal, and I'm going to be explaining to it what exactly this is, and even go through a little bit of history of it to see how poor the planning and decision making was, that it took so long for this to be finally coming to a closure. So, this is a deal where the Indian Navy is expected to procure six Type 214 next generation class advanced air independent propulsion conventional attack submarines from Germany under a transfer of technology agreement which would be made by Mazagor Dock Limited. So a lot of reports have been coming for the past few weeks that the Navy is close to signing the deal with TKMS regarding the tender, and the Cabinet Committee on Security had already given the approval for this project if for in August of 2025. So this is just coming close to its closure. So I'm just going to explain to you today what exactly is happening in this exact deal. So let's begin. All right, so firstly, we'll just go through the history pretty quickly, although like the majority of what I'm going to explain is about the history because that is what is going to explain what exactly went wrong. So firstly, a tender was issued in 1999 in which it wasn't a tender actually, but a plan to build 24 conventional attack submarines over 30 years, which would suffice the needs of the Navy up to the 2030s, 2040s. So the first part of this project was acquiring the six Scorpion class submarines. The deal was signed in 2005 and the last submarine under this deal was built in 2025. I know although this also took pretty late with the negotiations, this was completed. Then the second part of this exact same deal were the six additional submarines from a foreign vendor with transfer of technology from the foreign vendor to be made in India. Again, the Scorpion class or the Calvary class submarines were also made in India. So this was another six additional conventional attack submarines with an AIP enabled design. I'll explain to you all what AIP later is. And the last part of this entire plan was building 12 indigenously made air independent propulsion based conventional attack submarines, which is now termed the Project 76. So this was the main whole plan of how the tenders and how the planning and how the execution was supposed to be. So now regarding the Project 75 I tender, the in 2008 the Indian Navy issued the request for information. It was issued to six OEMs. However, there were a lot of differing choices between the Navy and the Ministry of Defense. The Navy wanted a private shipyard to do so, while the Ministry of Defense back in 2008 wanted a public or a government shipyard to build these six submarines. So that is what caused the bureaucratic inertia and delayed the project for quite some time. And then the acceptance of necessity for the project was refreshed in 2013, that it was finally given clearance by the defense minister in the Defense Acquisition Council to build six new submarines with foreign assistance in India. And then in 2017, again, it took 4 years for decision making for planning. So the Defense Acquisition Council then mandated a private sector firm to ally with a foreign OEM to build the six submarines under transfer of technology. So in this tender, six firms participated. So it was the Rosoboron Export, which is the Russian side, and then Navantia from Spain, Saab from Gripen, the same Saab from Sweden. I was about to say the same company that makes the Gripen fighter, and then TKMS, ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems from Germany, Mitsubishi, of course, from Japan, and then Naval Group from France, the same company that made the Calvary class submarines. So they responded to the acceptance of necessity. Then the Navantia and Mitsubishi, they failed to respond within the timeline. So then the tender was reapproved in January of 2019 for six additional submarines. And then Daewoo was also allowed to participate in the tender in between. So Daewoo is the South Korean company. However, it later withdrew. It was unable to fulfill the requirements given in the tender. Then Saab also withdrew in September 2019, citing that the control was being handed over to the Indian partner more than the OEM. And then Mazagon Dock Limited and L&T were chosen as the Indian finalists. So MDL partnered up with ThyssenKrupp Marine Systems, and L&T partnered up with Navantia with Spain. So these were all the five originally selected companies that participated in the tender. However, France again this was disqualified in July 2021. They offered a diesel electric variant of the Barracuda class nuclear attack submarine, and they were also offering an enhanced variant of the Scorpion class submarine. France was kept aside because there were plans to induct three more of enhanced Calvary class submarines that are already in operation. However, that plan is most likely now cancelled as per media reports that now the Indian Navy only wants to go ahead with the Project 75I clearance, and then they want to build 12 of their own conventional attack submarines in India itself under Project 76. Then Germany was qualified and it offered a 3,000 ton version of the Type 214 submarine, and it partnered with Mazagon Dock Limited for the same. Then South Korea withdrew from the same. It offered the KSS 3 class submarine. However, again, they did not want to transfer that much of a technology, so they withdrew from the competition. Then Russia offered the Amur class submarine, which is technically not something new. It is a refreshed design of the Kilo class submarine that we already have in operations. Although it is much vastly improved upon it, but still more or less the basic design is the Kilo class submarine. And then Spain offered the S80 plus class submarine, and they had partnered with L&T for manufacturing in India. So this was the private Indian shipyard consortium which was chosen. So then later more delays began to happening in 2021 and 2022, and TKMS actually withdraw in 2021 because they were not allowed to transfer tech according to how much the clause was asking for by German laws. And then the tender was revived in 2023 when the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, then German Chancellor, visited India, and like they had some sort of agreement, and TKMS rejoined the tender with the Type 214 subs. And then the L&T Navantia alliance was rejected last year in January, almost a year back now, or exactly a year back now. It's January 2026. So it was rejected in Jan 2025, which left TKMS MDL as the sole contender. So this wasn't much of a competition in itself. It took 10-15 years, and more or less it left one contender in the entire tender. So overall, the MDL TKMS alliance won the competition, and then the CCS approval for the same was granted in August 2025 for the six submarines, and the negotiations began and are now completed as per the reports from last week. And now it is expected that the Indian Navy will sign the contract before the end of fiscal year 25-26. So, what does this tell? This tells that the planning and the execution, with along with bureaucratic inertia, is so poor that it took 16 years to finalize a contract. By now, the contract should have been cleared, signed, and the deliveries for all six submarines should have been done by 2026. However, again, it took so long that now the Navy submarine fleet is actually kind of struggling. We are going to talk about that later up ahead. So again, just exactly what I just said. Too much bureaucratic military inertia. Again, Navy wanted a private shipyard. The government back then wanted a public shipyard, and the coordination was very poor among them. Then again, red tapeism, the same thing as bureaucratic inertia, and too much expectation from TOT forcing out contenders early. This is the same deal with the Rafale MRFA contract. The Indian government, I have no clue, and we're not going to go into politics again. I do not like to go into partisan opinions, but no matter what government it is noticed that the transfer of technology clauses are so absurd. Like, I don't think people understand that an OEM, they spend 10-15 years researching, developing a particular thing. And you cannot expect them to just hand you over 100% of the technology. That is just not possible. So again, I do not know what's going on. Like with the Rafale, also they were asking for like 80% transfer of technology, and they wanted 70%, 80% indigenization. Like the Tejas itself is, if we talk in terms of aircraft, the Tejas itself is like 64% indigenized. Hell, in fact, the Su-30 MKI is more indigenous than the Tejas. which is like, honestly, like, I don't even want to comment much about this, but it's pretty funny. So, anyway, the TOT expectations are just too high in the Indian military circles, or like I know some people call it the import lobby. I'm not going to go and use those terms. So, anyways, so now we're gonna just give some do some discussion about the expected design. So it is expected to be an enlarged and modified Type 214 class submarine, which itself is an upgrade over the German Type 214, which is a Type 212, which is designed for export. So this is dubbed the Type 214 NG class. I have no clue why they just like to put NG over everything. BrahMos, NG, Tejas, NG, everything. No clue why they do not choose good names. But anyways, names don't matter. The submarine itself is pretty good. So the cost is expected around $8.6 billion for six AIP enabled submarines, all manufactured in India, all with a transfer of technology clause. I am not sure how much a transfer of technology it is. I do not think it is 100%. Germany would not hand you over 100% of the technology, that's for sure. And then the armament expected for this is expected to be 18 heavyweight torpedoes and 12 cruise missiles. So cruise missiles might end up to be the BrahMos or might end up to be a sea launched version of the Exocet. Unaware about that, but I am pretty sure that it is probably going to be BrahMos because I don't think the Indian Navy would like to opt for anything else other than that. So now I'll tell you guys about what air independent propulsion is. We are not going to go into full physics chemistry depth. Just going to give you a brief introduction how this actually works. So AIP is called air independent propulsion and it lets conventional submarines operate underwater for longer periods without surfacing for air. So traditionally the conventional attack submarines, we're not talking about the nuclear ones. Nuclear ones can stay underwater indefinitely. It is just restricted by the crew endurance, which is food, fuel, oxygen, sunlight, all that. So traditional conventional submarines, they must snorkel or surface every few days to run diesel engines and recharge their batteries. They have batteries inside of them and they need to surface to the water to recharge them, and then the moment that they surface they become detectable. I think that is like something should not be explained. I mean, satellites exist, satellite based ISR exists, there's patrol aircraft roaming in the area, and then there's ships these days with like extremely long range radars, 300-kilometer, 400-kilometer range. So again, that just completely exposes you if you had to somehow surface to charge your batteries and run the diesel engines in a wartime scenario. So AIP solves this by allowing underwater power generation without atmospheric oxygen. This is not a substitute for nuclear propulsion by any means, but it is still a very big stealth multiplier, solely by the reason that it reduces the acoustic signature drastically. A very heavy reduction in the acoustic signature, and you don't have to come surfacing all the time. So like these days, pretty much the wars last like around a week or two, and the AIP allows you to have an endurance of around 2 to 3 weeks. So this is pretty much perfect for any literal combat scenario. Again, this is not a substitute for nuclear submarines. You cannot do long range missions in these submarines. You will have to refuel, you will have less endurance, you will have to surface even after 2 3 weeks. You will have to do that. So this is not a replacement for nuclear attack submarines, but this is definitely a step up from the traditional non-AIP SSKs. So now the fuel cell AIP is being offered for the Indian Project 75 ISUBs. Now fuel cell based AIP, and there's a difference between Stirling AIP. So the fuel cell AIP utilizes hydrogen plus oxygen to generate electricity and water. And as of today in 2026, this is the most advanced type of air independent propulsion available. Even the upcoming Pakistan Hangar class submarines, they do not have fuel cell AIP, they have Stirling AIP. So again, that should tell you that how advanced these submarines are. Only I think South Korean, Japanese, and German submarines have the fuel cell AIPs. Although I could be wrong, please correct me in the comments if I am. So now again, I think this is important, that why these subs are being procured is a direct counter to the Chinese growing fleet and the Pakistani growing fleet, because right now Pakistan itself is aiming for a 8 SSK fleet, Although, of course, they're not going to have all eight in service at a time. Some of them are going to be in maintenance, some will be undergoing crew training. So, realistically, you can assume four of their submarines would be in sea in a wartime scenario, or six at max. They cannot surge more than that. Pakistan does not have the economic power or the capability to do so. So the Hangul class is a Type 093B derivative, the Yuan class, and it is designed over quantity and cost management. Its main focus is not stealth, however, it does not mean that it is a bad submarine. The Type 214, on the other hand, it is a proven submarine design. A lot of countries operate it. I think Turkey operates it, Greece operates it. If I'm not wrong, please correct me in the comments if I am wrong. And it is built around maximizing the stealth aspect, that it should be as undetectable as it could be. Again, nothing is fully undetectable. You can detect nuclear submarines as well, although it definitely would take more effort on the part of the foe. So it does sacrifice some cost efficiency. It is not as cost effective as the Yuan class submarine is, but it is definitely one of the most, if not the most stealthiest AIP enabled nuclear conventional attack submarines in the market. So again, as I explained earlier, Hangor has a Sterling AIP and the Type 214 has a hydrogen AIP. I'm not going to go into detail regarding the differences. I think it's just going to make the video a lot longer, and frankly, it's not much worth to discuss about. You can I'll leave some links in the description down below if you guys would like to read about it. So the Hangor is a good submarine by modern standards. So do not think that it is some sort of Chinese junk. It is a good submarine. China's shipbuilding, China's research and development, China's technology has come a long way since the 1980s. So, online, if anybody is saying that the Hangar class is junk or it can just be sunk outright, that is pure cope. Yes, it is much easier to detect than the Type 214 submarines. It is still questionable about there is still doubts about how it compares with the German or Japanese standard submarines, but it is a good submarine. No doubt, it is much better than the Augusta class submarines that Pakistan currently operates. So again, this is not complete Chinese junk. It is a good, decent, and even slightly mature because China has been operating the main Type 039B submarines for quite some time around. So I think Pakistan has ordered eight of these to replace their Augusta fleet one by one, and probably add like two more submarines. I think right now they operate a fleet of six submarines. So they're going to replace their Augusta class submarines one to one with these, and they do indeed pose a significant threat. Although our ecosystem with the new anti-surface warfare corvettes, I think they're called the Mahe class, and then the P-8I Poseidon aircraft, the MH-60Rs, and the upcoming C-295 based anti-submarine warfare aircraft that will indeed give us a huge edge in submarine detection and the capability to sink submarines. But again, that does not mean that the Hangar class is not a threat, that it is a trash submarine. No, it is not. It is a good submarine. It is definitely good for what it is made to do. So, yeah. Now, does the Navy really need to import again? Yes, the Kilo class submarines have begun retirement last year in 2025 December. The Sindhu, no, not the Sindhu Ghosh, but one of the submarines from the Kilo class was retired. And then the Shishumar class submarines are also becoming obsolete in modern combat. The sensors are getting outdated, and the hull itself is slowly becoming detectable easy, much more easier. And the Calvary class submarines do not have air independent propulsion. Now, I am pretty sure that in a midlife upgrade, they are planning to install air independent propulsion in the Calvary class. If I am wrong, please correct me in the comment section. And then the Indian submarine fleet is itself on a pretty big decline because the Kilo class submarines will be slowly phased out by the early 2030s or the mid 2030s. And we need to have both imports and indigenous designs to sustain even the current fleet. And we have to expand the fleet as well. And then the plans to acquire three additional Scorpions has more or less been cancelled as per the media reports because the cost for those three submarines was coming out too much to be justified. So this is the current fleet of attack submarines that the Indian Navy operates. I have not included the SSBNs and the Akula class submarine on order. So if you all can see here that we have the first of all the Kalvari class. And there's six boats under that. We have all six that were ordered in service, and these were made in India itself, along with the French assistance, of course, because the design is French. And then there's the Shishuma class, which is actually older than the Kilo class subs that we are currently operating, although more or less both of the designs are getting super outdated, that they have to be phased out sooner or later. So, and then we have a few submarines under construction. So we're not going to talk about the S5 class. It's a ballistic missile submarine. I would like to talk about the S5 class in a future video, because the way the how India has quickly come so far in developing nuclear ballistic missile submarines, that is the result of planning the design from the 1980s onward and getting done with whatever they can have. In 2016, we got the first Arihant class submarine. That was the first leap forward. That was a technology demonstrator, more or less, that we can make SSBNs. And with the S4 and S4 Star class submarines now nearing their service induction, it is more or less clear that we can build good, capable nuclear submarines. And we had experience with operating nuclear submarines before as well. In 1988, in the Indian Navy used to operate a Charlie class nuclear attack submarine, which was leased from the Soviet Union back then. And then a second, an Akula class submarine, which was operated through 2012 to 2021. It was an older variant of the Akula class. And now we have a newer variant of the Akula class, which is in construction and is expected to be delivered by 2028. It says 2025 because that was the original timeline. However, as usual, Russia is busy in their war. They have economic problems. They have manpower problems as well, brain drain. So it has been delayed to 2028. And then right now in under construction, there's Project 75 Alpha, which is now known as Project 77. So these are six nuclear attack submarines that are planned, indigenously designed. And since we can design and develop submarines of 13,500 ton category, S5 class is going to be bigger than the Project 77. And since we have already built 7,000 ton class nuclear ballistic missile submarines, I do not have a doubt that we cannot build attack submarines. It is much easier to develop nuclear attack submarines after you have a base of previous knowledge from building nuclear ballistic missile submarines. And then the Project 75I submarine, this is more or less a done deal right now. The Type 214 submarine is selected. Wikipedia is outdated about that. But don't worry, I do my research before the video. I do not just simply copy paste everything from Wikipedia and tell you guys about it. And then this is more or less cancelled. It has been reported widely by the media that this is cancelled. If they do want three more submarines, they'll probably add an option of three more to the Project 75I contract, or maybe just add three more to the Project 76 tender. And then again, the Project 76, this is poised to be finishing its design work the upcoming fiscal year by the end of 2026-27, and then the clearance and approval and the construction is to begin. So lastly, I would just like to discuss that all the information discussed about the potential contract signing is currently based on media reports. Although the Navy has shown intent before that they want to clear this deal before the end of 2026, the 2025-26 financial year. But acceptance of necessity and CCS approval has already been given. So it is unlikely that they won't be signed post March 20, before March 2026. They will most likely be signed this fiscal year only. And one last misconception I would clear again: AIP, conventional attack submarines, do not equal nuclear submarines, nuclear attack submarines in stealth, range, in performance. The nuclear submarines are much, much bigger. So the nuclear subs are still vastly superior, but AIP subs offer a good cost versus capability balance for littoral combat. So that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. And if you guys have any questions, please comment in the comment section, and I would like to seek more ideas on what you guys want me to talk about. Next video is most likely be going to be on a history topic rather than I've been covering my first two videos on defense. So I would like to cover some sort of policy or law or economics or history related video. I have a history related video planned. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you all in the next video. Jai Hind.